When you got the call you're going to fight Pacquiao, what was going through your mind?
Awesome. I'm a fighter. This is what we do. I won a world title, but I want more. So it was an opportunity. I'm the kind of guy that I'm not afraid to fight anybody. I don't duck people. I've never done that my entire career. I've had a tough road. I haven't been fighting easy guys. I haven't been one of those guys who's a built-up champion who's been fighting guys so I could learn and progress. I've been thrown into fights my whole career. So I always told my matchmaker, he always said, the first guy he brought up, I was like, yeah, it's fine. I had no idea who it was or whatever. My team would go over it, but I'm a matchmaker's dream. If I'm going to fight somebody, I'm okay fighting.
Fight that if you win, what are your chances of fighting?
I didn't know. I don't think anybody knew, except for maybe Bob Arum. But Bob had mentioned it, and I do know that when Bob says something, you gotta listen. So it's got to be real if Bob says it.
Chris, how do you match up against Manny Pacquiao?
I think it's a great matchup, and I think for people who don't know who I am, it's interesting. It's an interesting matchup just by the numbers. You take it, you got a younger guy, an undefeated guy, a taller guy, an athletic guy. And just that way, it's interesting. But then on top of it, if you know who I am, you know the way that I prepare for fights, and the way that how I mentally approach a fight, you know this is a goddamn good fight.
When you talk about Manny's opponents, the one guy that he's fought that's kind of similar to you is maybe Bradley. Can you talk about what you've learned? First, what you learned from Bradley for the Provodnikov fight, and maybe what you're learning from him coming in this fight.
When I saw the Bradley Provodnikov fight, that was a fight where I said, man, I can beat this guy. Provodnikov. And when I saw that fight, I was like, I can beat that guy now. Because Bradley does do. Bradley's awesome. I think he's a great fighter. He's a good boxer. He's shifty. He's hard to beat, and he's one of those guys who just finds a way to win. Kind of similar to the way I am in terms of not maybe style, but just approach and abilities. In there, he's a gamer. So I see that, and I see he was thrown into the Pacquiao fight. Kind of like it went in over his head, kind of quote unquote. People fought, and he went out there and he performed. He ended up getting the win. It was a questionable decision, but nonetheless the guy fought well, and did well against Manny. They fought 24 rounds, and Tim did well. But I think with Tim and myself, I think there's a 5-inch height difference between myself and Tim. But Tim is an athletic guy, like myself. And there are certain things that Tim does that expose certain aspects of Manny's style that I'm sure my coaches can figure out ways to do the same thing.
The biggest difference would be your length and your reach. Can you talk about, I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but how much that's going to be a difference compared to what Bradley did against Pacquiao?
Well, even when you see me and Manny stand up next to each other, I think there's an obvious, advantage and an obvious difference in size. But I really don't think that's going to be the major factor in this fight. Everyone's, and he is too, working on the height and the length. I don't think that's going to be the thing. It's going to be my mental edge that's going to be the difference. The way that I'm approaching this fight, the way that I'm prepared for this fight, and just the way that I am inside of the ring. I'm a confident, aggressive guy.
But you got to think with you, the jab you showed against Provodnikov and your length, that's gotta give you some trouble, though. It was pretty obvious when you watch the Provodnikov fight. You think, well, if he does it against Manny, that could help him quite a bit.
Manny is used to fighting a lot of guys who just kind of walk up to him, kind of high guard, static defense, pin the hands against the temple, and they walk forward, and they look in a trade and to bang with him. Literally everybody he's fought recently. You look at like Margarito, Cotto, even De La Hoya, but the De La Hoya that fought him wasn't the jabbing, moving De La Hoya. He was the plodding, walking forward, weight sucked, lack of hunger De La Hoya. So, no offense to Oscar, he's literally my favorite fighter, but that was a different Oscar. So when Manny fights guys who give him different looks, he has trouble. Marquez, and even Marquez is kind of right there. Marquez is smart. So those kind of things, have shown to give Manny issues. I literally had no interest. No interest, no. When I was a kid, there was no MMA. When I was a kid watching boxing, I wanted to be a boxing star. I wanted to be a boxing champion. MMA wasn't even a sport. So for me, I don't have the passion for that. trained in it before. I've helped other guys in my gyms, get ready for fights, but it's not something I really would want to do. And these sports are so dangerous. If you don't love them, you're not good at them, don't do them.
Greg.
I think I'd be more uncomfortable if I was the favorite, because I don't think there's been a fight like that in a while.
When you were growing up in Long Island, what boxers did you know?
Oscar De La Hoya was probably the guy that I was like, man, I want to fight like, be like that guy. But we watched a lot of Roy Jones Jr. His heyday in the 90s. Mike Tyson, of course. Arturo Gatti when I was in high school. I used to love watching him fight. And I used to be like, I don't want to fight like that guy. I like watching him fight, but I don't want to be in fights like that guy.
So you were probably too young to remember Jerry Cooney.
Well, Jerry's actually a friend of mine. I speak to Jerry all the time. All the time. He's been in my last 5 fights. Yeah. He comes in the back. He comes in the ring after the fights and he's fighting Huntington. He's got a radio show on Sirius that I usually go on Friday night fights.
Chris, what do you think about Manny Pacquiao's accomplished in the sport of boxing and as a politician of the Philippines?
You know what? I really admire that. I admire what Manny has done with his star status. He has gone back and helps his people. I think me and Manny have a lot of things in common in that way. Is that we have an affinity for helping other people, and that's why I'm into medicine and science because I like helping people. I'm a nutritionist because I like to help people. And he's used his star status in the sport of boxing, all the work that he's done to go back and help people. And I think that's incredible. I think more athletes and more champions need to be like that.